and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek UK. I'm PRWeek's Deputy Editor, Siobhan Holt, and today I'm joined by our guest, James Wright, Global Chairman of the Havas PR Network, Global CEO of Havas Red, and Group CEO of Havas ANZ. The Havas PR Network is the PR social, influencer and communication arm of the Havas Group, and it comprises over 40 agencies globally and more than 1,750 consultants. So welcome, James, to the PR Week podcast, and thanks for joining me today. So I have lots of questions, so I'm just going to jump straight in if that's okay.
Fair enough, go for it.
To begin with, how would you describe business, PR business specifically, over the past 12 months? How's it faring against the other businesses as well?
No, the PR group's been pretty good. We've grown pretty consistently and been profitable across the global network and in Europe as well. Here in the UK in particular is a massive success story for us in the PR group, particularly Havas Red here, which we started in 2019 and now has grown like 25% year on year in terms of growth. And it's been a resilient period, I think, as well. I mean, some of our agencies have performed, stronger than others, but all of them are in relatively good shape. So we're super happy to be in PR and comms at the moment because it's not necessarily the same in every other marketing discipline.
Yeah, and what about it versus the other marketing?
There's a huge amount of transformation happening in all parts of marketing, as we know. But I think it's hitting advertising and media agencies a lot quicker and harder than us. And I see that with some of the agencies I look after. I'm looking after advertising and media agencies as well as obviously the PR network. And I think we can learn a lot from that as well, though. So we can be maybe being a fast follower in terms of embracing some of the tech and tools and how AI is shaping the agency landscape at the moment isn't a bad thing.
Excellent. And what parts of the PR elements are then faring the strongest? Which sectors are you seeing?
Well, I think, tech and health continue to be strong globally. And I think that tech's definitely had a bit of ups and downs, but has performed relatively strongly over the last 3 or 4 years. I think different specialisms within the corporate comms has really come to the fore in recent years as well. So employee engagement, as I think through the pandemic and now out the other side of it, I think employee engagement has been being tackled a lot more strategically with a lot more investment from clients. We're seeing a lot of work from C-suite comms or executive visibility, however you describe it, in your organization. And we've seen that grow a huge amount too, particularly I think as we're dealing with multiple issues for brands all the time. And so actually the trust and the personality of the people that run those organizations become super, super important as well. So we're seeing a lot of that. And then of course, ESG or the commitments to community as well has been, again, another sort of area of corporate comms, I think, that has really developed even further than it ever was.
Have you noticed maybe a dip in that area in the last 12 months with what's been going on geopolitically?
It's fascinating in different markets, right? So, I was based in New York for 4.5 years until a couple of years ago, and we're seeing some clients wanting to double down, triple down on it, where other clients maybe perhaps not feeling like they have to invest as much as they had. So there's bits of ups and downs on there, but in a lot of other markets, actually, they've just continued to invest in it. And I think also to demonstrate their commitment to community, but also to demonstrate their commitment to issues that are important to the stakeholders they are trying to attract. I've been writing and talking a lot about this age of rage that we're in, this sort of like this decade of anger of the 2020s, where everybody's angry about something. Everyone's raging about whether it's social justice, equal justice, climate change, war, cost of living. There's multiple issues happening. People are really quite angry and enraged by it all. And so I think, brands trying to find their way through navigating all of that, but also actually be an agent of change for good as well for those stakeholders and the important issues that are important to their customers or consumers or whoever they're trying to attract to the brand.
Yeah, we talk about trust and authenticity a lot, don't we, in this sector, but it must be a real challenge from a corporate advisory capacity.
Yeah, I mean, but also, that's where our strategic and technical capability comes to the fore. And so I love that because that's what makes us super important to our clients, because we have that kind of level of understanding and nuance in our strategic comms capability that perhaps other agencies in other parts of the marketing world don't necessarily have. And certainly I think that's why we're less impacted immediately by some of the other technologies that we're seeing hit other parts of the marketing world. So, but also, like I say, that's where our kind of strategic capability comes to the fore.
So I'm going to move on now to talk about the investment at Havas. And as someone from Manchester, I'm not going to lie, I'm very impressed with this. But in November, you obviously announced that you're to open an office number 3 Circle Square in Manchester. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about this move, who's going to be involved in that, and what sort of made that decision.
We've always had offices in Manchester, but we're now bringing all of the Havas operation into one building. in Manchester. And so this is Havas Links, which is our healthcare advertising agency, Havas People, which is our employee engagement agency, Havas Media agency, and of course Havas Red, the PR business that's there. And so we brought it into a wonderful building. The architecture is amazing. It's a very sustainable building. We've seen the impact of when you bring all the agencies together and the proximity bias of actually being able to understand each other's business in a much more real way, and building relationships with colleagues across different parts of the Havas group is super important too. And so you can sort of look at how you can cross-sell and organically grow through the relationships that the other agencies have. And of course, as I say this as a northerner myself, but like Manchester and other parts of the north are developed so massively over the last 15 years. And we're seeing, Manchester in particular has always had strong corporate organisations HQ there, but of course Media City's moved there. You've got other businesses like Puma and Uber moving to invest much more greatly up in the north. And we're seeing that actually having a strong northern presence is actually really important to a lot of our clients.
Yeah, so how will that work then with your King's Cross office?
Well, it depends on where the client is based and what they want. So we've always had like a strong presence, as I say, in Manchester, but some clients require a national presence. And I think if you've got that northern operation, it gives you kind of the eyes and ears on the ground, and it is a different media market. And there are different ways in which we need to understand how we talk to consumers and communities there versus elsewhere in the country. And so that gives us, I think, a bit more of an edge over perhaps some of the other holding companies that don't necessarily have a stronger presence there. There's obviously some great indie agencies up there too. So for us, very important to have that kind of national approach. And it's worked very well for us. As I say, that's why we've been successful over the last 5 or 6 years with developing the Havas Red brand in the UK.
We've seen actually a lot of agencies expand out of London. We've written quite a few in the last couple of weeks. And I was just wondering, is there a talent benefit for moving outside of London, do you think?
Well, the value always used to be that the salaries were a lot less, but actually I think that's changing. I mean, obviously there is a cost of living difference between different parts of the world and different cities. But for us, I think we want to be representative of the consumers and customers of our brands. And so I think you need to, regardless of whether you're only in London or whether you're in other markets or different cities, you need to actually be recruiting from all parts of the community. You don't have to come to London to have a great career in PR, right? And so I think that's what Manchester in particular of all of the other cities is offering. It's just a different vibe there, right? It's just a huge amount of investment in that city at the moment. I've been there a couple of times this year already, and it's like phenomenal. And I'm going there actually next week. So, we're very proud of our heritage in Manchester, and, we're also looking at how can we maybe extend that across other parts of the north?
So do you think that could be an option then, that there could be other cities for Havas to approach?
Well, my very first job was in Leeds. And I went to university there. And so it's a city that's very close to my heart. I've got friends of mine who actually I started working with and now own their own agencies in that part of the world, and they're doing super well. Yeah, so maybe, we have a strategy for how we want to grow and develop, but, we're always open to things. And often it's like client driven, or an opportunity arises and comes across our desk and we decide to actually look at it in a bit more detail from an acquisition perspective, for example. But yeah, for sure, those things are on the cards. And I think what's great about Havas, we're very entrepreneurial. So, and the way that we're set up makes us a little bit less bureaucratic, perhaps, particularly from a PR network perspective, in terms of being able to make decisions when they're smart ones for the group. We can make them pretty quickly and make it happen.
In your view, then, do you think Manchester's becoming the second city for Marcoms?
I don't know I wouldn't say it was a second city. I think it's a different city. And I think that over time, I think you'll also find, that certain types of industries and types of work will end up there. If you take the US, for example, and I think what's wonderful about London, you can do a lot of generalist PR there, right? You've got all types of PR. You've got tech PR, healthcare PR, corporate PR, consumer PR. In the US, the different cities often align to different types of industries based on where it is. It's very tech focused, for example, in San Francisco. It's very kind of Latino audience focused in Miami. It's quite corporate in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. So I think Manchester may end up also becoming like a real hub for certain types of industry, like maybe media, right? So like we're seeing that already, or retail, whereas a lot of retailers hubbing themselves out of that part of the world. And I think therefore it may well end up becoming like a city where that really it becomes the center of excellence for those types of industries.
Interesting. Moving on, last year, B Lab, the non-profit organisation behind B Corp certification, revoked the B Corp status of 4 Havas agencies following investigation, and this was a result of the group winning Shell's global B2B media account. I was just wondering how you felt about this decision.
Havas Media Network won Shell, I think, in September 23, so it's a couple of years ago now. And, we have to respect that different parts of our group choosing to pitch for certain types of clients, and we respect that and I understand that. It does mean that we sometimes have to manage those issues with our current clients and particularly our actual employees, really. And so that's what we did, and we respect the B Corp decision that happened almost a year after that, which was a year ago. We're just very focused on the PR network, or I'm very focused on the PR network from a global perspective, and we don't work for Shell. It's in the media group, and it's unfortunate about the B Corp thing, but it doesn't change our commitment as a group to sustainability. And, last year we were awarded the gold medal by EcoVadis, which is the world's most trusted provider of business sustainability ratings. And we continue to try to decarbonize our operations. We have a very kind of significant investment into the sustainable side of the group and how it operates. And really, I often say, like in holding companies, you can control what you can control, and I can only control what I can control. And so that's what I'm focused on, is really what the PR network is doing and how we go about our business.
But you mentioned there sort of the impact on staff. Has there been? Did you face some backlash from that decision?
I think less so in the PR network because we weren't directly working on that business. But the reality is you win certain types of business and some people get more upset than others do about it. And we've got to understand that that's an important piece. We are in the business of people, right? We don't sell a commodity. We sell strategy and ideas. So our most important assets are the people. They walk in and out of our buildings, virtual or the physical buildings, every day. And so, it's very important that I think that we are as transparent and open with them as we can be about why we're choosing to do what we do and why we choose to work with certain types of clients and how we're trying to help those clients change and be better corporate citizens. So look, for sure, there'll be people that were very upset about it, but we recognise and understand that. And we've done a lot of work with listening to our staff, since then in other parts of the group.
You obviously mentioned staff there. What about client relationships? Did you also have to have those difficult conversations as well?
Yeah, some clients are, again, it's a bit like the people, like they're less concerned by it than others, perhaps because of the nature of their own industry or their own business, but also recognise that it's not necessarily their place to be advising where their ad agency, media agency, PR agency decides who they should be working with. But then for some other clients, it is a bit of a concern. And so you have to have a transparent and open conversation with them. And fortunately, as a PR person, that's again, where our strategic and technical capability comes to the fore, and actually talking to them about why the group has chosen to do what it's done in the media network.
And did that work, or did some say, actually, we're going to part ways?
I had quite a few conversations with clients, and most of them, when you sit and actually have a conversation, understand why certain business decisions are taken. And I think that it's on the trust of the relationship you have personally and also professionally with them that you can get through those sometimes tricky conversations.
Talking there about relationships, let's drill down a bit more onto that. So if we look at more client and agency relationships, there's been a lot of talk obviously about ghosting and poor pitching, and I just wondered, what's your overall view on it at the moment? Have you noticed any trends in this?
I think it's improving in the last, I would say even the last 4 or 5 months. And I talk about that globally, and I'm not so familiar with what's happening here locally across other parts of the industry. I can talk about what's happening at One Green Bean and at Red and at Havas So and the other PR businesses we have. I think we're quite smart about who we're going after and who we're pitching. But even then, you can do all of your own due diligence, and you can still end up on the wrong side of a situation where you pitch and then it takes forever, and then suddenly the decision either eventually doesn't happen, or you can be 9-12 months down the road and then a decision is made. And certainly we've been involved in examples of that. And I think it's really important that the clients take some responsibility in all of this, right? Because you're investing time, resource, energy, emotional energy often as well. It's a very often quite an emotional process when you're all gunning to try and win a piece of business, and then the client tells you there's going to be a decision on a certain day, and then you just don't hear from them, or they push the date back and it just goes on and on and on. You're like, well, we're not being paid to pitch. More often than not, we're not being paid for pitch. Certainly most agencies aren't being paid to pitch. And so it's I think there's got to be a bit more respect, I think, about the process then. Even if it's just to be upfront and say, look, there's some challenges happening internally. This is going to get pushed back. It's more this lack of communicating back from the client to the agency to explain what's happening.
Do you think paid for pitches would actually be a good idea?
We've been paid to pitch, but it's very, very few and far between. Actually, some government departments in other parts of the world have started doing that. But, I think that it would be healthier if that were to happen. And I don't know what the industry body's position is on this. I know from my experience, a lot of industry bodies around the world talk a good game about this, but actually there's not a huge amount of follow through, because otherwise we wouldn't still be having this conversation. It is a conversation. And yeah, it's very sad when you, like I say, you put all of that emotional energy and you put the resource in, you put the time in, and you actually think we've got an amazing campaign platform, idea, strategy for this client, and you're chasing them forever and there's no decision being made. So I think it's super frustrating, and it's a sad indictment on the industry, I think, if it's happening more and more. I mean, I don't know for sure how much it's happening here. I mean, I know from talking to friends who work at other agency groups that everyone's got some version of this. And I see it in other parts of the world as well, where I've just come from India and I've been in Singapore in the last couple of weeks. It's an issue everywhere, but everyone's got some version of it, though.
We are obviously waiting on more details on the Omnicom IPG deal, and I was just wondering what your view was on this merger, and could a merger or an acquisition be on the cards for Havas?
Well, we're always in the market for looking at opportunities, and there's nothing new about that. I mean, what I would say is in the last few years, we've probably been the most active holding company in terms of number of deals, in terms of volume of deals, not against the private equity firms, but against the other holding companies. So we have done more deals than anyone else. But there's a lot of change happening in the holdcos. It's almost like a homogeny now in those big groups. And obviously I say that with the greatest respect, because there's some amazing people that work there, and I'm sure there's a lot of very smart people that will make things work with Omnicom and IPG. And I saw Chris Foster in India a couple of weeks ago, because we were both speaking at the same conference. But there'll be massive challenges with that. And there's certainly some concern from a talent and client perspective that I'm hearing in different parts of the world, and people that are coming to talk to us for looking for roles or looking for potentially homes for their brands. So there'll be opportunities there, but like I say, there's a lot of smart people there, and I'm sure they'll make it work. But for us, we're a little bit different than them. We're not a big holdco like that. We are a challenger holdco. I think we've got a point of difference in the sense that we're still quite family orientated. We're family owned, even though we're listed, and we're very entrepreneurial. And I think we move a much faster pace. And we also come from a PR network perspective, from a position of strength. The global group has grown consistently in the last few years. Okay, it's off a lower base than those, larger holdcos, but that's also meant that we don't have necessarily the legacy or the bureaucracy that comes with that. So we can move. I mean, we started Havas Red in 2019. We're now in 23 markets, over 800 staff in just that agency, not let alone the Havas PR network. And that's an incredible story. I mean, we're really the new kids on the block there. So, we are trying to be, a counterpoint to perhaps, you've got the benefits of a holdco, but we're big enough to matter, but small enough to actually move at pace to be able to deliver for our clients. That's our perspective. Of course, everyone else has their own perspective on their brands, on what they're doing. But that's how I view what we're doing at Havas and Havas Red.
You mentioned there about recruitment, or you touched on it. I was just wondering, what's the market like at the moment, and how has it changed maybe over the past year?
As I mentioned earlier, talent is what we're all about, right? You hire great people, and you can be in the best position to try and grow your agency and deliver for your clients. It continues to be a challenge, though. And again, in some markets, it's tougher than others. There's some markets where there's a huge amount of great talent on the market right now because of the changes in some of the other groups, or because of the nature of the macroeconomic environment. However, I think the more interesting part is the types of roles we're now recruiting for are changing. And of course, you're recruiting almost for roles that don't exist yet as well. So you're trying to find people that can come in with perhaps some of those more technical skills around tech and tools that are going to be critical and continue to be, or become more critical as time develops. But, for me, though, you still need great client people that the clients can trust and know that when there's a problem, they can pick up the phone and they're talking to someone that really understands their business, and that's critical. From my perspective as well, we should never be cutting back on investing in creative and strategy as well. So finding great creative and strategic people is what we're all about. You find those people who've got great people skills, negotiation skills, whether that's working with the clients directly or working with the stakeholders that the clients are trying to engage with. It's super important. I think those skills are what sets the PR industry apart.
So then what would your priorities be for the next 12 months? Maybe specifically as well, you've mentioned Havas Red and One Green Bee, and I was just wondering what their priorities are going to be over the next year?
Yeah, so we want to continue to grow, and that's super important. And, we're looking at new industries to sort of focus and specialize in. We will continue to invest in social and influencer as well, because that's a huge part of our group and represents about a third of our maybe a little bit more than a third of our revenue globally. And in some markets, it's a heck of a lot more. In other markets that perhaps are still a little bit more traditional. So we'll continue to focus on those areas in particular. And then, I think the specialisms I was talking about earlier as well, I think, creating products and offerings in specializations around corporate comms, I think will continue to be a factor for us. We're just about to announce a new leadership bench in One Green Bean in the UK. And then for Havas Red, we've invested hugely in our talent and we'll continue to do that. But we're breaking new frontiers and new markets. We've expanded quite a bit in Africa in the last 12 months, simply because there's client needs there. We launched in South Africa a couple of years ago, and clients really came to us quite strongly as a new agency in the market. Yeah. And that then led to our other clients who work for other parts of the Havas group across Africa wanting to lean into us for PR. And so we ended up opening in other parts of Africa, which was interesting. But, really the big markets, though, the US, the UK, France, Australia, the Middle East. Middle East is a huge growth area for us. Has a fantastic, phenomenal leadership group there at Havas Red. I mean, that's been a massive success story. Huge developments in Spain, where we've seen great success as well. And I think, you mentioned about talent. All of those markets have got great leaders. They've got great leaders who, I'm really got great relationships with, and I'm there to help them and try and run interference with them from a group perspective, but really grease the wheel so that they can really move at pace, which is what they've all done in terms of growing.
Yeah, and you mentioned is this talent that you're within other parts of the network that are moving to some of these places, or is it that you're noticing the talent in the region?
It's a bit of both. So I have moved some of the talent around different parts of the group. So like we had some people that were in Australia now in New York and in London, and people moving to Singapore, and then some people into Dubai. But then actually just hiring great local talent as well. I mean, and the Middle East is a great example of that, where we've hired sort of really, really well, and they've done super well. And Spain the same as well. So it's a bit of a mixture of both, but ultimately you want to find the right person that is going to be able to shape the leadership group and really deliver on the vision that we've got, which is to do work that we describe as being borderless. Work that can live in any channel. That's the holy grail. And you look at any piece of work that wins major awards. They're kind of ideas that I talk about. One story, many shapes. There's one story there, but it comes to life in many ways, in different shapes, right? And you want those kind of ideas that, you talk about around at the water cooler, you talk about over a boardroom table, you listen to on a radio because you've heard it talked about, you've seen it on breakfast TV, it's coming to life in your social feeds. And those sort of moments where an idea becomes part of the zeitgeist is just, we get a few of those in our careers, and it's just like, wow, like that's why we do the job.
Absolutely. And I was just to go back, you've obviously mentioned those countries, but what sort of elements of PR are you seeing in those regions? What seems to be the growth area?
Well, I think the need for strategic comms over the last few years has really come to the fore, because business transformation is something that is only accelerating, both in terms of from a technology perspective, in terms of dealing with macro and micro social economic issues, dealing with war, dealing with supply chain issues that are related to some of that. I think so. And all of the different, the age of rage issues I was mentioning, I talk about the raging 20s, but, the climate issue, the equal justice, social justice issues, the cost of living issues. And I think clients are still looking for that really help to be able to navigate through it, let alone, of course, the pandemic, when they really had to overly communicate both internally and externally of how they were going to keep the wheels turning in certain industries. So I think strategic comms is certainly there. And obviously, every brand's a news brand now. They're releasing news through their social channels. And so you become the social newsroom as well, right, for clients. And that's an area that is only going to continue to evolve at pace, particularly as the impact of AI starts to continue to develop how we develop content and actually generate insights that are going to better move a message or better move a story.
And also impact reputationally as well, which again is
100%.
Another challenge.
Absolutely, yeah.
Moving on then to AI, the famous term. So what are your views on it and its impact on PR, such as productivity and creativity?
Look, I think AI has got a lot of developing to do, right? I think it's still really, it's in its infancy in how it can be used. And I think it definitely is helpful to optimize and operationalize administration tasks. They're more strategically very, very useful from a insights and research perspective. I think it can be used in basic copywriting as well as a basis, but you still need the human element over the top of it. And I think just need to be very careful about how it's used. And I think I touched at the top of the podcast about how technology and AI is being impacting other parts of the marketing mix versus, particularly advertising and media and advertising hugely and much quicker than it is us, because you still can't find a bot that's going to be able to sell a story into a journalist, or whether your client would even trust a bot to sell a story into a journalist, or to walk down the corridors of power to lobby for regulation, right? So there's a lot of the strategic comms part of it is still, it's just too nuanced, it's too advanced, the work that we do as humans versus what can be the potential of AI. My concerns with it, though, also are that it's kind of democratized mediocrity, because everyone can do quite a bit now with it, and therefore they think they can utilize it in different ways. It comes to life a lot when you do a lot of judging at award shows. Every campaign has some AI component. It's like, we need to do something with AI, and then we'll put it into an award show. And it's like, and there's some great AI work in there, but it's kind of getting lost because everybody's trying to put awards in or campaigns in with AI. And, everyone's asking, could we use it? Clients are asking, could we use AI for this? Or can we use AI for this? Or even people internally in the agency is saying the same thing. I think we shouldn't always be asking, could we? But should we? Should we be using AI for this, really? Not could we? Should we be using it? Because sometimes it's not right for what we're actually looking to achieve for a client, or with a business challenge that the client might have. So lots of upside to it, but also I think we need to be careful, because I'm still quite concerned about how it can be used as a tool for misinformation and disinformation and for privacy, etc. Yeah. And also copyright as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was at a conference recently and there was a brand talking about how, they had their first instance of AI, a fake AI misinformation story that was out there, and how they handled it from a corporate reputational point of view. So, there's real challenges out there, and I think it's only going to grow. I think you're right.
But then there's a service there around, actually advising clients around how to use AI, or how to manage when AI goes wrong. Or when you see stories about your industry or your brand that are clearly untrue and have been driven by competitors or just people at home who've created stories. So it's a toddler at the moment. And I think, we've got to work out how it's going to grow and help shape that. And I think be much more forthright as an industry about how we think we should be using it. And I think, again, there's a role for the industry bodies and for the big agency groups to really be clear about, how we regulate it.
What are your other industry predictions then for the next 12 months? What do you think we've got coming down the line in 2026?
It's such an exciting time to work in our business. I always say, I get to work in PR. I don't work in it. I get to work in it. It's like such a privilege. But we're seeing lots of developments in the realms of clients wanting to be a force for good, I think. And I think that is going to continue. And people like looking to stand for something beyond the badge. And so I think the concept of corporate purpose has been pressure tested like never before in the last few years. And I think that those that have really doubled down on their own purpose and taking that to the next level, I think we're going to see them come to the fore. And then after the raging 20s, I've been talking about the fact that we're going to get into these kind of thirsty 30s, where people have been kind of so angry and upset about things, and actually they're going to start to be really thirsty for, I guess, personalized experiences where we can help them be a force for good themselves. And so, we wrote a paper not long ago called Generation Me, which is about, not necessarily all about me, but it was all about how brands can help me, empower me, enable them to have a better kind of sense of purpose for themselves, and actually how brands can do that. And of course, we see a lot of brands do that really, really well. I think some other industry predictions over the next 12 months. I think the next decade will reward substance over spectacle, brands whose operations and people prove their message before the marketing does. And that shift, we think, is already quite underway as audiences look for companies that live their purpose, not just name it or narrate it. Another, I think, is agency over anxiety. People want control over their data, their purchases, their time, and they're less tolerant of algorithms that push rather than serve a purpose for them. And then finally, human over hype. After years of, I think, screen fatigue, consumers are thirsty for human touch points. This idea of the thirsty 30s, where face-to-face experiences, products labelled human-made, and communications that feel real, not automated, I think is what we're seeing from consumers and within the research that we're seeing.
Absolutely. That'd be really interesting. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks so much to James for coming on the podcast, and thanks to you for listening. Bye for now.